Sibilance.
Symbolism.
Lozenges.
Lozenges sound like fucking
Lozenges.
something that gets stuck in your throat. I've always thought that. I'm like, I'm going to have a lozenge.
Lozenges.
Just like one-way street to Chokeville.
It's impossible to say that word without sounding drunk.
Lozenges?
Lozenges.
Yes. Yeah, I just want some lozenges. Lozenges. Like rural. Rural's another one of those.
If you have rural lozenges.
Yeah, you'd probably get kicked off a plane.
I totally. Like, sir, we haven't even given you any drinks. Did you come in drunk?
I just had some
Why?
rural
Because
lozenges.
I have rural lozenges. I brought my own rural lozenges. Get him out of here.
Yeah. So you're cut off. But
All I have is water and rural lozenges.
Water. I had some of that H2O.
Yep. All right.
Well, on that note,
welcome to GBM Hangover. I'm David.
I'm Florence Higginbottom.
Oh.
No, I'm Chris.
All right.
You can find me at idoshittybeerreviews.aol.clamfart.
On Netscape?
Yes.
Netscape. Just ask Jeeves.
Only second to Internet Explorer.
I was listening to the news the other day, and they were talking about how Google's a monopoly because they have the search, the SEO, and then they sell search terms, and then all this. So they have to break up, and Chrome is going to probably have to either be sold off to someone else or go away as a browser. And it reminded me of Internet Explorer from like the 90s. You know, like they used to have an Internet Explorer browser, for Mac and for Windows.
Oh, yeah.
Thing. And remember that? And that all went away.
It did.
It was so long ago that I feel like people just either don't know that or forgot or, that's not a thing anymure.
It's like trying to...
Yeah, it's like a whole internet ago. You know what I mean? Like
back when dial-up was like running shit.
Right, yeah. Like you just, fire up the modem and just get on Internet Explorer, But anyway, yeah, I was just thinking about that. That's the modern day version of that. Like it happened again.
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody got so big that they're just going to come in and bust it all up again,
Well, I remember using Internet Explorer before making the shift over to Safari. And I was just like, I don't want to use this cheap piece of shit.
Right.
And now it's like making this, switch over to Chrome.
Yeah.
Everything runs on Chrome.
Right.
Which I'm like, can we pick one?
Yeah. And Chrome's great, actually, but I don't use it just because I use a Mac and I don't know. I bet I just kind of like the integrated closed loop of everything, but but lots of people use Chrome. It's a great browser, so I get it.
Dude, fuck Google Docs, man. Yeah. I hate those things. The fact that you have to get access to everything. I know that we haven't even started talking about it.
We're kind of on a sidebar, and we haven't even gotten started yet. But we're doing a podcast, and podcasts are very internet based. And this is not that different of a topic than a podcast. So,
you're not wrong.
We're kind of on the topic, sort of. So if you're on the internet right now, because you probably are, if you're listening to this, you probably have an opinion about this exact topic. What are we talking about today?
Probably talking about the fact that we haven't done shit for 3 weeks.
It has been a minute. And I feel like it's my fault.
You have not been there.
Yeah, I've been moving around the earth, and I haven't been here with you, and so because of that, it's caused this to be very challenging. So.
Yes, it has.
Yeah.
Speaking of challenging, there's been a lot of like stuff in the sky, like with the fucking Aurora Borealis and all that, and people like look in but think, oh, the light pollution. I'm pretty sure that 85% of light pollution around here anyway is caused by Menard's fucking light section. Have you seen this thing?
It's impressive.
It's the center of the sun.
It's impressive. I was wondering where you were about to go with challenging, and then you started talking about lights and then space, and I thought you were about to make a Challenger reference.
No.
And I thought, well, that's just going to get dicey. Where are you going with
That's too soon.
Is it?
No.
It's not too soon. I mean, it's just kind of a sketchy topic, just in general. But then I wondered if you were going to go with the astronauts thing, and you were about to head there. But I should do air quotes when I say that.
That is a whole
astronauts
different.
But that's why I kind of where I thought you were going. I don't know where you were headed, but it wasn't to the Menards light section. That's not where I thought you were going.
I'm just trying to keep everybody guessing.
It's cool, man. It's cool.
Yeah.
That was fun. That was good. So we've got some beers in front of us here tonight, and I think we've got an equally impressive topic to talk about tonight.
Yeah,
which should be charged in its own right. So,
well, I mean, talking about IPAs,
and what does that even mean when you say IPA? What do you mean?
I kind of feel like this is a left and right kind of conversation as well. Like, what is a woman? What is an IPA?
I think we should focus on IPAs.
We should.
Yeah. Okay. That's a big enough topic.
It's also just as there's no.
Yeah.
It's a very gray area.
But honestly, I like them all. So
do I.
It's a gray area, but at least they all taste good.
Now, we are talking about the differences, just the evolution of IPA.
Sure.
Honestly, back in 1996, when the craft beer pioneers, I guess, which you got Lagunitas and you got Sierra Nevada and you've got Stone, making these really hoppy West Coast, pale ales, West Coast IPAs, and just these big bitter bombs. That's what IPA was for a really long time.
Sure.
There was that section, probably the mid 20-teens, when everybody was fruiting the shit out of their IPA. So you had Sculpin with grapefruit, Sculpin with mandarin orange, and then pretty much started with the haze craze somewhere a little bit after that.
Yep.
And then what was that total abortion that they did? Oh, yeah, the brewed IPAs. Completely dry.
That was sort of towards the tail end of all of this. It happened, 3 or 4 years ago? 3 years ago, maybe?
Maybe 2018, 2019.
Oh, was it that long ago? I feel like it kind of happened, and then it sort of, everybody's like, sorry, we made a mistake.
Yeah. Let's not remember this.
Well, it kind of was a shot in the dark, and everybody was kind of trying to do something fun, and I think that's fine. First of all, it's fine. Experiment. There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
I don't mean to insult anybody. That's fine. But it didn't catch on. It wasn't really the same thing. So yeah. Yeah. So I mean, and I think that's kind of what's interesting, right? I think what it's turned into is people say, I like IPAs or I don't like IPAs. And it's gotten to the point where you got to give me more. What do you mean? When you say you like an IPA, what are you flavor profile? What are you saying?
Well, back in 2008, 2009, maybe even 2010, I remember, that was early on in my craft beer journey, and talking to people about craft beer. They were like, oh, yeah, it was either, no, I don't like Guinness and heavy beers, or I don't like IPAs.
Right.
And now everybody's an IPA fan, but it's usually because there's this slushy IPA.
Sure.
I mean, IPA categories become kind of a catch-all for it's like the Mazda Miata of beer now. Anybody can just take it and tinker with it. And
take it and run with it. Yeah.
Whereas I don't know. There was a couple years ago that I was online, and I was like, man, gone are the days where you actually have a clear IPA or something that you can see through.
Yeah.
Everyone's just immediately just jumped on top of me and just basically crucified me in the comments, because
I remember you talking about that.
God forbid I didn't say something nice about a hazy IPA.
You got attacked.
Hey, it's in my opinion. So if you don't like it, you can go fuck yourself.
Yeah, you can just not pay attention to me, which is fine. So you've got you brought this one up tonight. This is a Stone IPA, which has got to be one of the most perfect examples of what we would now call a West Coast IPA, but I mean, really was just an IPA, right? I mean,
and it's iconic.
Yeah, it is. It's iconic, and it's a perfect example of that style of beer. It's bitter. It's that bitterness that, you're sort of looking for. I jokingly say it's like drinking a Christmas tree or, whatever. It's that kind of flavor profile. Now, I to your point, I didn't necessarily like IPAs when I first started drinking beer. That wasn't my journey in.
Yeah.
We've talked about that. Everybody has their journey into craft beer. Mine was through the malty side. It was through the stouts and the porters and the browns that's how I came into craft beer. So I eventually learned to like IPAs, but that wasn't my journey in. So
mine was Goldschlager.
Beer. This beer is cold and it has sparkles in it. Anyway, but yeah, so I mean, I think this is great. I was doing a little research, kind of like in preparation for the discussion, and thinking about that. I've spent a lot of time in New England, just because my job is based out of there. So that my company that I work for is from that area, and so I've spent lots of time out in that area of the country. And there's obviously lots of hazies out in that region, and we can talk about that, or whatever, the New England IPA, and what's the difference between a hazy and a New England. And I did a little thinking about that and research about that. Turns out not a lot. They pretty much do use the terms interchangeably, although they say all New Englands are hazies, not all hazies are New Englands. That's kind of what I found. I don't honestly know. I think you'd have to get pretty specific, if you know what I mean. Like I think that if you pretty much you could use those terms interchangeably, and most of us would know exactly what you're talking about. And I don't think anybody honestly cares unless you're like somewhere in the middle of the country and somebody's like, it's not a New England, it's a hazy, and you're like, oh, okay, dude, whatever, but I don't know, whatever. So I think they're kind of interchangeable. But I did look up because Heady Topper, right, is kind of one of those OGs where I was like, okay, they get a lot of credit anyway for being, sort of one of those first hazies. And I don't know whether that's totally true. They're a little before I started drinking craft beer. So that 2004 was the date that they started brewing Heady Topper. Do you know of any hazies that kind of predated Heady Topper, or was that, from your perspective, one of the first ones?
That was kind of the first one that really did anything notable. And
they're, of course, from the Alchemist out of Vermont.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else that's striking until you started having more of or at least around here when Phase 3 and Hop Butcher and more, started brewing a lot of that stuff. But when it comes down to it, I think, honestly, one of the biggest differences is the water profile.
Okay.
And then obviously everybody has their own version of their hazy. Some are a little bit more bitter. Mm-hmm. It also depends on, what your recipe is going to come out to be.
And what kind of hops you're putting in it. Mm-hmm. That's going to make a difference. I mean, if you load it with Citra hops, it's going to be juicy, juicy, juicy.
Oh, yeah.
So.
And I think one of the precursors to it was some of the citric pale ales, kind of like Zombie Dust. Mm-hmm. And then people just kind of kept taking it further and further, mostly because they wanted to experiment more with it, or they don't want to do anything with any other styles, so they keep fucking around with IPAs.
Yeah. Well, what I was reading, because I don't, obviously you brew, so you know the brewing side of it. I don't brew. I prefer to hang out with people who brew. I've got enough expensive hobbies.
I like drinking said brew.
I also like drinking said brew.
Yeah.
But I was kind of learning about sort of how they create a hazy and, that whole process. And I guess because the hops are added later, and it creates a softer flavor. And that softer flavor, obviously the haziness is how it gets its name, but that softer flavor gives it the sort of juicy kind of character and that sort of less bitter quality that is more approachable to people who maybe are newer into craft beer, or it's a more approachable flavor profile for people that the bitter is maybe a little more off-putting. So, and one of the things that I was also reading was that they said that a lot of the sort of popular breweries that were all coming up all at once, right? So they said Treehouse hit in 2011, Monkish hit in 2012, Trillium hit in 2013, Other Half was 2014, Weldworks was in 2015, The Veil was in 2016. So all these breweries that were brewing hazies just all kept hitting one after another, and they were all good at marketing, and they were all good at being very right now. They were all very hip, new, check us out, marketing like crazy. And they were just accelerating that whole style of beer like crazy. And that really pushed it all from a social media perspective too.
Yeah.
And really, really like accelerated all of that, which all makes sense, right? If you think about like 2011 and then on, especially to 2016, that's when it just went nuts, right? I mean, it just really went crazy. And there was no one pushing the West Coast style of beers until actually kind of just recently. You know, I'd say in the last 3 years, probably, everybody just kind of started pushing back, you know, and the West Coast stuff has really started to come back again. I think kind of more of the pendulum has started to swing back in the other direction, right? And I think the other thing that I found kind of fascinating was that I don't think, despite everything I could find, hazies were never actually bigger than traditional IPAs in the marketplace. Like everything I could find never said that.
Right, because IPA in a grand scheme is what they usually measure what the percentage of the market rate or market percentage is. Mm-hmm. So whether it's an IPA, West Coast, if it's a hazy IPA, it all kind of gets lumped in together. So the IPA category is pretty much what it is. It won't say if the hazies outweigh the West Coast.
Okay. Well, I was looking for that because I was kind of like, they said the most recent measurement I could get was that in 2021, which was so long ago at this point.
Yeah.
It said that.
Well, and you had the COVID warp in there too.
It said 20% of the beer market was West Coast and less than 10 was New England. And that was the last measurement that I could find. I think it was 8.9% was New England, but it never eclipsed American IPAs. You know what I mean? Which I thought was interesting because it felt like it did, at least around here. Yeah. It felt like it did. You know, anyway, so just some things I kind of found as I was looking around today that I thought were interesting. The last interesting note that I thought was kind of fun. The most popular by revenue IPA in America. Guess, no?
Most popular IPA?
Most revenue. For an IPA in America. It won't surprise you when I tell you.
Probably Goose Island IPA.
Yeah, I was like, you might not get it. It's not that one, but it's Voodoo Ranger. Oh. Okay. Again, I know if that probably doesn't surprise you. No. We've all seen Voodoo Ranger everywhere, right?
That's like the only beer that they fucking make now.
Right, New Belgium. Number 2 is Voodoo Ranger Juice Force, which is a hazy. So nice. Number 1 is a West, and number 2 is a hazy, and they're both Voodoo Ranger. And I think that's kind of interesting.
Well, that makes sense.
Which made me laugh too. So it's like, I don't know, man. The IPAs are just wild right now. It's totally crazy.
Well, since there is a resurgence happening, I mean, it's just like everything else being cyclical. Back in '96, when Stone and Lagunitas and Sierra Nevada and a couple of these other ones are kind of coming up and making these hoppy IPAs. We also were coming out of a lot of like pale ales and lagers and like beer flavored beers.
Right.
So then we went to the nth degree of like stouts becoming more hearty and like everything being barrel aged and everything becoming like 40% ABV and like just absolute astronomical shit happening with beer, fruiting up IPAs, everything's exploding in your fridge, just all this crap,
just loading them full of adjuncts and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Now we're getting back to like when lagers are having a resurgence, and then we're getting back to people are being all hazed out, so they're going for like something that's a little bit.
We talked about that with the Yinglings too. Mm-hmm. It was like just getting back to lagers again. It's really nice.
I think everything is kind of swinging back, and then we'll get right back to seeing some more of the traditional styles like porters and brown ales and like red ales and things coming back. Just because again, it's cyclical. It has to happen that way. Because we're talking 30 years now since like these giants really started getting going back in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
So. Makes sense.
It does, yeah. And that was the other thing that we didn't really talk too much about, and that's milkshakes. Like the milkshake IPAs.
Yeah.
That's really the extreme version of any of that, isn't it?
Well, then you're talking like fruit puree,
lactose,
you're talking tons of lactose.
Like, the texture's completely different.
Yeah, it's starting to lose its IPA-Ness.
It's losing its beerness.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not even a beer anymore. It's like you're drinking a smoothie at this point, you know?
You know, speaking of IPA-Ness.
Which again, back to it again, which is fun. Like, it can be fun. Like, but let's not kid ourselves. This isn't a beer anymore.
No.
Like, you're just drinking an alcoholic beverage of some sort. But this isn't. Don't kid yourself.
You're drinking one alcohols.
It's just fun, but it's a party trick.
It is.
It's not. It's not a beer
totally
anymore,
a gimmick.
You know, and it's fun, but it's just whatever. We're having a good time. But anyway, sorry.
I remember in college I was doing my typography class, and we had to take forms of letters and keep the fact that you can tell what the letter was, but change it up enough.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the guys had P. Our professor was like, "Oh, it's kind of losing its penis."
Oh.
And he's like, everyone, of course, started laughing. And he's like, no, you could listen, you could say it about any letter, you know, like it's losing its anus. And I'm like, you picked the 2 letters out of the entire fucking alphabet. Let's just go home.
Yeah, right.
We're done here.
Right. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's any other letters that works. And it doesn't.
I think I spent the rest of the class going through all of them. And I'm like, no, I think we're pretty much good.
Yeah. I think that's it.
So I actually prefer and have been really jonesing for a solid West Coast IPA lately. And I think generally I will always reach for a Stone just because it's one of the OGs.
They really do them well, too. They really do.
Honestly, one of the other biggest things, whether you're kind of waging war between the hazies and the IPAs of like the West Coast and the bitter style of it, a lot of people, I mean, back in the mid 18th century when IPAs even came around,
right?
Basic reason they even put the hops in there was for a preservative.
Right, a preservative, right. So they could ship them to India, right? They're British beers to go to India or whatever, right?
And it was just basically
the India Pale Ale.
Right. Basically withstand shipping time. But interesting thing enough, too, is that if you talk to a lot of people, usually either British or Belgium or anybody like German, they will argue that because it's got so much hops in it, it can actually age longer. Mm-hmm. So obviously one of the biggest things with IPAs, rule of thumb is fresher the better. But a lot of people will say that because of it, it should be able to have a longer shelf life. But because as Americans, we're like, we want all the hops and we want it to be the freshest possible. Mm-hmm. No, you have like a 90-day window for it to be considered fresh.
That makes me think of the Dogfish Head, like the 30, 60, 90. Mm-hmm. And how if you let that sit for too long, it basically turns into a barley wine.
Yeah, especially the 90 or the 120 minute.
Yeah.
The reason for those is that it's continually hopped. So instead of being hopped at right at the beginning of the boil and towards the end, it's continually hopped for the 30 minute to the 90 minute, the 60 minute boil, whatever it might be.
Because I've had those after they sit for
too long.
While in the cellar. And they definitely they get boozy, you know, and they drink like a barley wine after that. And it's actually, I mean, it's not even bad. It just changes character.
It does.
You know?
I mean, just like anything else, you know, you get a little bit of that oxidation. You let the hops kind of subside a little bit. Mm-hmm. You know, the malty character kind of comes through. You know, fresh IPAs are generally known to kind of have that like piney, resiny flavor to it. You know, this IPA is a little bit older. I mean, this was packaged on January 9th.
Yeah, right.
So, way to go, Woodman's, having the freshest shit on the shelf.
But, yeah, it's an enjoy by of May 9th.
Yeah, so we're still within reason, but even this would still be considered old by a lot of like hop heads. Yeah, flavor palettes. Like,
actually, to that point, you know, a lot of fresh hopped beers, like the I'm trying to think of some good examples, but they always seem to come out in the spring. Where they're wet hopped beers.
Like the
I can't think of any like names off the top of my head, but like I feel like Founders does one.
I think of all of the harvest ales.
Yeah, exactly.
But that comes out in the fall.
Okay, those are fall
so
beers.
You've got like Sierra Nevada Celebration.
Yeah.
You've got, I mean, fresh squeezed by Deschutes is more so fresh hopped more than wet hopped because it's not from vine to kettle within like 2 or 3 days.
Those are all really fun. Those
are
fun
really
beers.
Good.
That's a fun time of year when those come out. Those are always really great beers.
Founders Harvest Ale, Surly Wet.
But those are ales. I guess they're not necessarily IPAs. They're not really that. And they're not as bitter necessarily.
No, because you still have the water content from the hops, and it doesn't necessarily. But I mean, alpha acids are alpha acids, and I don't even think that they have enough time to like really put them through any sort of rigorous tests.
Yeah.
But they're delicious.
They are delicious. Yeah. And I feel like whenever we have conversations about this, I feel like it always ends up turning into, I feel like I end up being the guy that's over there going, I still like hazies. I feel like I'm that guy, and I still do. I still really do. And even right now, I've got this can here that I want to open next, which is a Trillium beer that I brought back from Boston. And I think they're great. I still do. I mean, no, granted, I like lots of different kinds of beers. So, I'll drink this Stone, no problem, but then I'll be happy to open this one up and, have this one too. So I'm just kind of a fan of all of it, and that we have some really great hazies here in Chicago. Phase 3 makes some great ones. Hop Butcher makes some great ones. We have had some evenings of Hop Butcher beers, and they have a very specific recipe that they follow, and a lot of their beers can taste very similar. Sorry if you're listening.
Specific recipe. I think it's like one.
But hey, whatever.
I'm not mad at it.
But that's the thing, is they're not bad though. They're not bad. Oh. They're very specific. Like when I drink one, I know I'm drinking a Hop Butcher beer, and that's not bad or good. It just is. But like we've had nights where we did a lot of them, and by the end of that night, you're just like, it's just a lot.
Palate fatigue, hop burn.
It's just a lot of flavor. Now, what I will say about Hop Butcher is that their stouts are pretty banging. And when they do stouts, like those are a lot of fun. Tons of flavor. Flavor.
Usually pretty sweet, heavily adjuncted.
Yeah, heavily adjuncted. They're a lot of fun. They're good to share because they're so sweet, they're so intense. They could open a couple of people.
Well, I've always said that Hop Butcher, even to an extent, some of the Phase 3 hazies, it's basically like listening to Dave Matthews Band. It's like 47 renditions of the same fucking thing. Is it bad? No. It's fine.
Phase 3 has some good variation between some of their stuff.
They do.
I mean, depends on which ones you're talking about, but
usually a little bit better than Hop Butcher.
A little more variation, between them.
Not better as in like it's better beer, but better flavor, variation.
Right. But better variation, right, between them. Yeah. Yeah, they do some different things between their hazies, right?
Yeah, we got to make sure that we tread pretty lightly because we might piss a lot of people off.
Yeah, which is fair because they're all great beers. Yeah. I mean, they are all very good beers. And so that's the important thing to note. It was interesting. So I was on Untapped because I wanted to look at my own stats.
That's dangerous.
Yeah, it is kind of dangerous. Especially, I'm looking at my annual stats, and I'm like, these seem low. And I'm like, oh, it's April. That's why they're low. But
we're only 4 months in.
We're only 4 months in. Of course, their stats are a little screwy sometimes. I wonder where they house their stats, it's like geographically.
Austria.
Probably.
Most likely.
Yeah, something like that.
Or in some dude's basement in Great Britain.
Well, it seems like it's not in America, to be honest, because my Monday stats always show up as Tuesday. So,
yep. So mine.
Something's off.
So that means it's got to be in London then. I mean, you were just over there. Didn't you knock on a couple doors?
My Monday night, here is Tuesday morning over there. So that feels like that's probably what's going on. But somewhere in Europe anyway.
That's when the clock resets for it.
Yeah, something. But anyway, so I looked up my stats. So I have all-time stats. 461 different hazy beers that I've checked into, 216 American IPAs, and then I have 158 double IPAs.
Okay.
And what I don't know is it a double IPA? What does that mean? Because it doesn't fall under the hazy category or the American IPA category.
Which is interesting because there's a lot of double hazy IPAs.
I know. That's why I was like, what the heck? So now I don't know what, to your point, IPAs. I don't know where that goes. Like, I don't know. What's a double IPA? Like, where does that go? So that was a little bit annoying because I don't know which bucket that 158 falls into. But I mean, you definitely can't exclude it because it's a big number, the 158. Like, if you included it under the hazies, then I'm way over on hazies over regular IPAs or American IPAs, you know, because that would put me somewhere around 600 versus 216. You know, hazies versus Americans.
Well, and I think that you've probably had a lot more of the hazies in the past 6 years just alone.
Yeah,
based on,
and that's full check-ins. So, you know.
And I would have to, you know, say too, like, so we had a GBM one time that we rifled through 28 different hop butchers in one night. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but we did switch it up a little bit with like the porter and
I mean, I think that one for that specific brewery, that's probably not the best move, just because they're again kind of similar. But anyway, it's a loud can.
It was a loud can.
Sorry,
everyone's eardrums just got blown out. So I feel like when we did that, it definitely was a little one-noted.
Yeah. Hazy. Very hazy.
If I had to drive through it,
you'd crash.
Yeah.
But you can see the difference there. That is very hazy. And Trillium is in New England. That's a really nice example of the style of the hazy.
Well, and we did another night that I don't know if we had Treehouse involved in it, but I know we had Treehouse. I don't know if we had Trillium involved in it, but we did.
We didn't.
The Hop Butcher and the Trillium.
Yeah.
And I thought, did we have a third one in there too?
I think we just did Treehouse and Hop Butcher that night.
I think we did 3 beers of each, and we had some of the bigger hitters like Orange Julius and stuff in there too, and I kind of feel like that was one of the tipping points of saying like I think we've got the hazy IPA market on lock here in Chicago.
I think we all agreed that while the Treehouse beers that we had, and I don't know that we had Treehouse's best beers, to be fair, you know, but the ones we had, I think we felt the Hop Butchers were better.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, again, kudos to Hop Butcher. They're banging.
And having them on, you know, Treehouse beers on their own.
Yeah.
Great beers.
They are great beers.
But I think when you start comparing it, you know, the Hop Butcher, I think just kind of takes it up a little bit. Also, maybe we're a little bit more used to it. Maybe Hop Butcher uses more lactose or something a little bit differently than Treehouse. Even Heady Topper to a point is got a little bit more of an IPA bitterness.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we were talking about Heady Topper earlier, and I've had it a few times now. You know, when I've been out there, like someone will bring it to me and they'll be like, "Oh, you got to try Heady Topper because you're out here," and you know, that kind of thing. And it's like any of those beers, the OG beers. You know, I've had the hype now, and I don't know that the hype is bigger than the beer. Right? Because then you get to try it and you're like, "Oh, this is it, man. This is Heady Topper," you know, and then I'll try it and I'll be like,
"Whoop-de shit."
Well, I mean, it's okay, you know, you know, but like I've had so many beers now. I don't know. I was expecting more, you know, but it's not bad, but I think for what it was at the time, it was probably pretty incredible. But you know, I mean, that was 2004. That was 20 years ago. You know? So it had a moment that it was what it needed to be then. You know, it's not saying it's bad now, but, you know, hey, I was a lot better 20 years ago, probably. I mean, no, that's probably not true. I'm pretty awesome now, but like, you know,
kind of a big
different,
deal.
but different now is I guess my point, you know? So, one thing I was going to make, if you are listening, Hop Butcher, someone from Hop Butcher, Ocean Key is a great beer. And, I haven't seen it in a long time. And, that was probably my favorite beer, that like hazy beer that you guys ever did, and it doesn't taste like all the rest of them.
Didn't it have vanilla and something in it?
It had key lime in it too.
That's it.
And it tasted different than all the others, and it had like the wave on the side. And what happened was I liked it so much I saved the last one too long. I kept it in the fridge like for a long time. I didn't want it to go bad, but I kept it in the fridge. And when I finally opened it, it wasn't good anymore. And I was like, oh, because I really loved that beer, and I kept that 4-pack, that one last beer too long.
You just like kept blowing kisses to
Pretty
it.
much,
every
yeah.
time
I was like winking at it when I opened the fridge. I was like, someday it's you and me. And then I finally opened it, and it wasn't good anymore, and I was so upset. But that was such a great beer, but I haven't had it since that initial release. I don't think there may have been 1 or 2 releases, but it's probably been 3 or 4 years since it's been out, and it's good. So please make it again. If you lost the recipe, find it, because it's so good. And that probably my favorite Hop Butcher beer. That's not a stout. So.
Well, and the fact that you took that and had it age too long kind of brings me to back to the point of hops as a preservative. And, these hazies generally have a lot of hops.
There's a lot of other stuff in that beer, though. But yes.
Yes.
Right.
But one of the things that I noticed when we did that 28 Hop Butcher night, we had some of the beers that we had were fresh.
Yeah.
And then some of them were probably 7 months old.
Yeah.
And honestly, the beautiful thing about it is that they obviously didn't taste as bright and citrusy, but they still tasted really good.
Yeah.
And I also noticed that the beers that we got from Hop Butcher or even Phase 3, some of these like super hazies, aren't necessarily as amazing on the day that they're released.
Yeah.
They're still a little green. So you could give them like a week or two. They kind of hit that sweet spot, and that's exactly where you want them to be.
That's a good point. We've talked about that too. That's a good point. Yeah, super, super, super fresh isn't how you want to drink those.
Right.
Yeah, you want to give them a week or two to let them kind of mellow out just a little because they're too green. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we've been super like analytical and beer focused in this episode.
Well, that's probably a good thing since we started off bullshit.
Yeah, we were just like going totally sideways on Google Docs.
Yeah.
Like usually we joke around a lot more, but this one has been like really, I think this is a passionate topic for us. I think we were a little bit, we've referenced like in previous episodes, kind of the like, let's be careful opening this can of worms with the IPAs. Cause I think it's a big topic.
Especially because I think a lot of people gravitate, especially now, towards lumping in, I think hazy IPAs, the New England IPAs, the hazies.
They should have been their own thing. Don't call it an IPA. Just call it something else.
Because now you have people that are just hog wild over IPAs. And I guarantee you, if you gave them a Stone IPA, they'd be like, ugh, this is gross.
This isn't good. I don't like this. I don't like IPAs. Seriously. Like, but you probably do. Like when people tell me that, like, I don't like an IPA, I'm like, all right, hold on a second.
It's an acquired taste.
Well, and also, you probably do like an IPA. I could probably give you an IPA right now that you probably do like.
Well, and in that article that we had read earlier today, talking about the fact that when you have an IPA that's like a West Coast or something that's actually bitter, the whole concept is that you have to train your taste buds to realize and remember that bitterness in a beer is not a bad thing.
It's not bad. Right.
I don't know where we're going to be going, especially with the IPA category in the future, but I really don't know what more you could do with it. I mean, we've already seen sour IPAs. They're not really a big, huge part of the market. Black IPAs have kind of been making their way back. Mm-hmm. Firestone Wookie Jack, Stone re-released Sublimely Self-Righteous. I've seen a couple.
I feel like there's always a few, but not,
few and far between.
That's what I mean. There's always a couple.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say they're making their way back necessarily. There's just always a couple.
Well, there never really was a big category for them, but the ones that were there have kind of come back.
Okay.
So they're as back as much as Katy Perry's An Astronaut.
Oh, look at you.
Barely here.
I'll let it back.
But whatever.
Yeah, right. They've all been in space for 10 minutes.
Also, I said it.
But anyway, yeah, and I think, and I'm all for experimentation and everything else, I think, I guess it would have been nice if they would have kind of created a different segment.
Or subcategory.
Just a different.
Have you tried to actually add a beer on Untappd and like scrolled through the 500 listings of IPAs?
I have done it one time that I've tried to, and then I realized that if it's not there, I don't want to.
Yeah. Just
And
let
I'm
somebody
like,
else do it.
Guess I just aren't. I'm not gonna check into that beer.
Yeah. I pass it up too.
Yeah.
I used to, and now I'm just like too much work.
Yeah, right. In some ways, and I'm going to sound really lazy when I say this, but in some ways, I'm kind of like, if I, like if I don't, like there's times when I don't check into a beer, and it's in there, and I'm like, that's a lot of work. You know what I mean? So like for me to look it up and it's not in there, I'm like, there is no way that I'm going to check into that beer. Like it's just not even possible. You know what I mean?
It's like you're convincing yourself.
If like driving to the corner store is too hard, driving to Alaska is never going to happen.
Mm-mm.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, no, if it's in there and I'm not checking into it, then if it's not in there, I'm definitely not checking into it. So
speaking of driving to Alaska, I would hope that every plane ride to Alaska shows the onboard movie of Alive.
My goodness.
It just gives you something to think about.
Yeah.
In case of an emergency, eat the pilot.
All right. Well, I think we've given you all the information that we know and that you don't need to know really about IPAs, I guess. But I think that's probably it, right?
I think so.
Okay. Well, that's
already
enough.
Divulged the plethora of crap.
Yeah. And I guess we've also shared our opinions about Google Docs. If you need to have an opinion about Google Docs because you don't have one,
you can Google it on Internet Explorer or Netscape Navigator.
That's right. Ask Jeeves and see what he thinks about it. Ask your friend Tom on MySpace what he thinks about your website. All right. Well, on that note, like and follow. And please subscribe. We could use some subscribers. So please do that. And you'll be notified when we release our next podcast, which hopefully won't be 3 weeks from now. And otherwise, everybody, thanks for watching. And let us know your feedback. All right.
I kind of feel like we're an actual podcast now because we have to say all the subscribe.
Yeah, like and subscribe and smash that button.